To the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lake County. I'm Alexandra Ligon, and I'm your service leader for the day. My pronouns are she and her. Our speaker today is Reverend Kaaren Anderson, speaking to us through Zoom. She described her topic this way. Jesus was once asked, "What is the most important law to follow?" And he said, "Love your Lord your God with all your heart, and love your neighbor as yourself." This is such a complicated and seemingly odd practice that it might just seem impossible. And yet, it might just be one of the most important things we do as a spiritual practice, day in and day out. Also today, we have Ruth King here with us to brighten our service. Yay. Okay. Singer, songwriter, author, and to share her music as part of our guest musician program. Ruth has performed nationally, and we're fortunate to have her with us today. We will have more guest musicians for future Sundays when the choir is not singing. Welcome, Ruth. Welcome you here. Okay, let's see. As far we have some announcements. Give me a second. Oh, yeah. Next week, Reverend Cynthia Snavely will be with us again to speak on the topic Remembering Pauline Murray. And next Sunday's morning discussion will be led by Karen Frank and Karen Woolhouse, a brainstorming session on the intersectionality of Green Sanctuary 2030, UUCLC, and Forward Paths. We're grateful to our wonderful Terry Sullivan for our lovely service music today, as I said, to Betsy for our PowerPoint slideshow, and to Pete and Dustin who are working their magic in the tech booth today. Thanks to all of you for your efforts to bring our services to everyone. First, let me remind you to please mute your cell phones. I encourage you to read your bulletin or check the website, uuclc.org, for the many activities going on each week. All our meetings for the week and the Zoom links are listed there as well. Times and locations sometimes change, so the website and the weekly bulletin have the most up-to-date information. If you're visiting with us for the first time, we hope you will come often. Be sure you signed in with our greeters and gave us your email, and check the box on the form if you want emails from us. That way we can keep you posted about upcoming events. And be sure to help yourself to literature on the table in the narthex. And if anyone is interested in learning more about UU and UUCLC, consider signing up for our next orientation class on the sheet that's also in the narthex. So we have a couple of other announcements. Let's see. Bear with me because I didn't practice this and it's not written down. I'm terrible with that script. There is going to be a group of the congregants are meeting this afternoon for an event at the Public Library in Mount Dora. It's called the Ocoee, Florida Massacre, and it's in celebration of Black History Month. They're going to meet together after the service and probably go to lunch after the event. If you need the addresses or if you need to sign up, let someone know. Let Karen know. Yeah. Karen? Chris? Huh? Chris. Sorry, darling. See, we did this earlier, right? She did the same thing with mine. As a hoot. Okay. Anyway, Chris. Okay. Are there any other announcements on the floor? Yes, ma'am.
The March potluck has been changed to from the 3rd to the 10th. So it'll be the second Sunday in March rather than the first. Bernie isn't here today, so I'm announcing that on behalf of hospitality. On the 3rd is a reception for Eco Expo 2024, exhibitors, volunteers, speakers at Trout Lake at 1 p.m. and any members of the congregation who would like to come are welcome to. And Bernie was gracious enough to change the potluck since the majority of the hospitality committee is also working on the eco. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else or any other announcements from the floor? Okay, so our opening words this morning. Bring who you are as you enter here this morning. Bring yourself here and open your heart to beauty, to truth, to the door that is open to the presence of the Spirit of life. We are one. We are trying to walk together in a peaceable way, trying to hammer out division and hatred and all that separates us from one another. We come together this morning to bow our heads in prayer, to raise our voices in song, to remember our promises, and to vow once again to live by them. Welcome to everyone who is here with us in the sanctuary today. Can we greet those joining us on Zoom, please? Justin. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Lots of people today. How exciting. Yeah, it's good. If anyone is here for the first time or returning after an absence, and only if you're comfortable doing so, raise your hand, and when a microphone reaches you, please tell us who you are and what brought you here today. Would anyone want to share? Yes.
This is my friend Sylvia next to me. I'm in the Lake County Ladies Chorus. She is our pianist. She's a wonderful pianist. She's really good, and she has a great sense of humor, and she's so much fun. Just no matter what we do, we can be doing the same 3 stanzas 20 times over, and she never gets frustrated. She's just really upbeat. Wonderful person, and she came to hear Terry today. And so really, she doesn't want to speak, so I'm going to speak for her. She's really an awesome lady, and we're really glad to have her here.
Welcome. Anyone else? Wonderful. Okay. We acknowledge that we stand here today upon the traditional lands of the Timucua Native peoples. We are privileged to gather this day in their ancestral homeland. We give this acknowledgement to demonstrate that we are working to undo the intentional erasure of indigenous peoples by our ancestors and to honor the strength and resilience of all indigenous people. We do this as a first and critical step toward learning and working with indigenous communities to stand in meaningful partnership and inclusion in the stewardship and protection of their cultural resources and sacred homelands. We own our responsibility to care for this land as they have, as our Mother Earth cares for us and for all living things. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you for sharing your Sunday morning with us. Chalice lighting. As we light our chalice this morning, let it remind us of our commitment to work to bring the light of reason to our world when it is filled with the darkness of ignorance, to share the light of hope when our world is filled with the darkness of fear, and when our world is filled with the darkness of hate, to shine the light of love. Spirit of life, come unto me. In my heart, all the servants of compassion, each Sunday, we make time for those who wish to offer a joy, concern, or sorrow, or to set an intention for the coming days. If you would like to take part in our stone ritual, I invite you now to come in silence to place a stone or stones in the sand at either of the two stations, one in the front and one in the back. Following this time, anyone who has a joy, concern, or intention that you wish to share aloud with us, please raise your hand and someone will bring the mic to you. You may begin. Sorry. Bear with me just a moment. Would anyone care to share aloud?
This is a joy. My new granddaughter, Esme Ruby Millett Clark, all those names, born February 5th, is doing very well. She's got a big appetite, I'm told. Keeping your mother very busy, while Dad has little to do, not as much, put it that way. So he's going to head back to work next week. So we're very pleased with that. So I just wanted to let you know that everything's going very well with them. And we hope to, Christy and I hope to get up to Connecticut to see her at the end of the month. So thank you.
Henry.
Yes. Oh, certainly.
The Joy, the SJEC committee hosted Love Extension clients for lunch on Valentine's Day, and it was a very fun party, and they asked us to do it again sometime.
I've got three quickies. One, we spent Valentine's Day at Unitarian Church this year. We went up to Try UU for their big Valentine's Day bash, which turned into a really fun movie watching experience with more candy and cake and pizza and other goodies than you can ever hope to have. So that was number one. Number two, my nephew, who we've been wondering if he was ever going to get married someday, is getting married tomorrow to a wonderful woman named Zahab Alston from Jamaica, I think originally. And they're having an amazing at Colgate Rochester Divinity School chapel, which is now a private venue apparently. They're going to have it in this glorious chapel, and they're bringing all the relatives in, and it's going to be an amazing cross-cultural affair because Quinton is mostly Dutch, and Sahaba is not. And they're really quite a couple. And the third thing is, I think it's 6 days, honey, it's 6 more days. I'm gonna have another grandchild. And we're kind of on pins and needles waiting for the baby to be born up in Frederick, Maryland.
Wonderful. Anyone else? Okay, we will now enter into a time of silent meditation, being mindful of the joys and concerns we've just heard. Take a moment to find a comfortable posture and let the chime draw you into mindfulness. Please join me in reaffirming who we are by reciting together our congregational covenant found on the screen. Love is the spirit of this church, and through service, we live our principles. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Higher than the heavens, your love, greater than the mountains, your love, broader than the universe, your love, clearer than reality, deeper than humanity, longer than eternity, is your love for me. Higher than the heavens, your love, greater than the mountains, your love, broader than the universe, is your love, is our tradition at UCLC to give generously to our church. Am I in the right place? No, I'm not. Am I? This is very confusing. Sorry, guys. To give generously to our church, keeping in mind both its meaning in our lives and its impact on the world. There are several ways to donate that are listed on the screen, and you can also leave your donation in a wooden box in the narthex just outside the sanctuary door. Thank you for your donation today. Now, I had a hymn at this point, but I see that we don't have a hymn, so I guess it's sermon time. So excuse me, and I will go back to my seat.
Morning. I want to share a reading this morning with you that was a love letter that I sent to a stranger. And I'm going to give you the background in a minute, but I want to share this with you first. Dear Tammy, I'm so sorry to hear of your recent horrific experience with fire and the aftermath of recovering from such extensive burns. I can't really imagine how painful that is, so your will and determination to make it through this is remarkable. Your daughter has called you a trooper. A trooper. I hope you heard the extra meaning in that. Someone who can make it through thick and thin, who leads others forward when they feel downtrodden or in despair, even themselves at times. You are clearly a force of nature to start to make it to the other side of this, and a shining star for how difficult it is to keep on keeping on through adversity. It sounds like there's more surgery for your hand, so I'm hoping that keeps progressing and healing. During this holiday time of much happiness and sometimes forced joy, I hope you can take some time for yourself and realize that you are a wonderful, a miracle, a gift to the universe. That you are the epitome of resilience and strength. So shine on, darling. Be gentle with yourself. Breathe and feel how connected you are to all of us who don't know you at all, but hold you in our heart and minds with love and compassion. Thanks for being a light onto the world, Tammy. You are loved. Kaaren. Here ends this morning's reading. Okay, so I want to explain that reading for all of you. In December, I did this spiritual practice of writing love letters to strangers. And you may remember that last year, if you were in the service, one of those times that I preached, you had people in your congregation write you love letters. So in that sermon that I gave to all of you, I talked about this young woman named Hannah Beekner. Now, Hannah has this website called The World Needs More Love Letters. And in December, she offered the 12 days of letter writing. And these love letters were to complete strangers, to anyone who participated in the project. And the recipients of these love letters were recommended by a family member or a friend because they thought they could especially use one this time of year, some extra love. And indeed, I was one of presumably hundreds of people around the world that participated in this. And these 12 people were then delivered hundreds of love letters by complete strangers as their Christmas presents of sorts. First, I did it as a spiritual discipline of goodwill, I would say, and working toward that dictum of Jesus's highest commandment, to love your neighbor as yourself. And I mean, what a great way to start, right? For 12 days, each day you'd sign onto the website and there would be a new person with like a little description of who they are, what they're facing right now, what they're facing in the future, what's coming at them. And by facing, I mean there were some serious like tragedies that had befallen people, from fires and accidents, complicated surgeries, caring for family members with disabilities. There were emotional challenges too, such as depression, anxiety, mourning, loneliness, and isolation. And there were, of course, financial challenges, loss of a job, extreme income changes, and divorce that led to like no financial stability. All the recipients were wrestling with some significant challenge. So each of these 12 days, like I said, I'd look online, see who the new person was. I'd read about them, then I'd sit down and write. Now, sometimes these love letters, they took, like 10 minutes, and some I'd, like juice up a little bit, and it would take me 45 minutes. But the writing never felt like a burden or a must do. It felt strangely liberating and connective. I have come to the fact that I think the English language needs a better word than connective, because I became more than their neighbor, but a friend, because now I felt like this person deserved or earned my love. And as I reflected on that, tried to figure out why is that actually? I think it's because it's easily felt like almost effortless to love a stranger whose story I knew. Their story kicked in then my empathy, which in turn kicked in my love, right? But I kept pushing myself as in, Kaaren, okay, there's got to, like there's more to this than that. Like, what's the rub? And it turns out that it's something I forget every day. Jesus's idea of a stranger meant you don't know their story, right? Because they're strange to you. And yet, here's the thing. All the years that I have done ministry, I know a few things to be true. That everybody, every human being in their life, either in their immediate circle or in their larger family system, have all three of these, or at least one of them, which is addiction, abuse, or mental health issues. And nobody escapes that, right? Sometimes we only have one, sometimes we have all three. But somewhere in people's larger family systems, as I said, right, it plays out in it. And yet, when we think of strangers, okay, so let's take the person who's bagging your groceries, or the loan officer, or you may have a older lady who sits outside of your grocery store. Maybe even the meter guy who comes to read your meter, right? All strangers. We almost always forget that. At least I forget that. I forget that they have all of those aspects in their lives, those three things, right? And I don't mean to speak for all of you, but I forget it. I forget that everyone is living out some story of struggle that could kick in my empathy. The Christian theologian and writer Richard Beck writes regarding this commandment to love your neighbor as yourself. And here's what he said. Jesus is trying to blur the boundary between self and other. Jesus is trying, in the second greatest commandment, to conform an identity relationship between self and other, to see our lives as intertwined. And the hallmark of this fusion is empathy, the ability to stand in another person's shoes and ask a simple question. If this were me, what would I want? So this intertwined relationship, we usually only hold for those we love, those we know intimately, those we care about deeply, those we invest in. So this concept of loving your neighbor, a stranger, that's really hard. It's even getting me a little choked up. I don't mean to. It is often not only out of our comfort zone of loving a stranger, but frankly, really, really hard to do. Love is complicated for so many reasons. So sorry. Most of the time, it is reciprocal, right? We feel rightly or wrongly that those we love earn or deserve our love. So love out of the blue for someone who you don't know, they sure haven't earned your love or deserved it. And yet that's what I think Jesus was wanting us to reflect on, to wrestle with, actually. If we are entwined with one another's lives, if we are deeply connected, if we are fused together, so to speak, as humans, earning or deserving love is actually irrelevant. And I think he wanted us to see love as an unearned gift. I think he wanted us to see that love means offering everyone compassion and empathy. In truth, we don't know anything about the stranger and the neighbor most of the time. Their story may very well be our own story because somewhere along the line, they too, just like all of us, have experienced that triad of pain and challenge, worry and loss. They too, right, are infused with what it means to be human and thus are worthy. Actually, more than that, they need our love and support, just as all of us do. It also occurred to me that there's a complication here. The people who were nominated to receive these letters, right, had nominations that were written about them in compassionate terms, as in they drew out your empathy for the stranger. Because the write-up about them was written by someone who already loved them. The recipient's stories were framed then in a certain light. In the sense, the person kind of nominating the recipient was saying, hey, you know what? Here's what they are wrestling with. They deserve your empathy. And yes, all these 12 people certainly deserved my empathy, my love. But again, I realize how really, really complicated and difficult this is to do. Because here's the thing, right? So a few minutes ago, I brought up strangers, right? The lady begging your groceries, a loan officer at the bank, maybe some person who sits outside of your grocery store. Maybe it's the utility guy who comes to your house, right? But they're all strangers, right? And it's with these strangers that I think actually we have the biggest challenge inside of ourselves and with them. I can, in theory, take a guess at their story, but because I don't love them already, I may frame that story differently than if I do already love them. Especially, right? Here's the twist. If the person begging my groceries is short-tempered and grumpy and has just ruined my day, I need to tell their story in a frame that lends my empathy to them. It needs to be a benefit of the doubt story, the kind that we give to those we already love. What if that electrical guy comes and knocks on my door and complains that I'm never around when he wants to take the meter reading and he's always frustrated with me and he doesn't have time for me? I need to love him with my storytelling, even though I didn't start off loving him. So not only is it imperative to give the stranger a backstory, but to add to that, we need to be very, very kind of liberal in our embracing of the fullness of who they are. And yeah, they have, like all of us, that triad in life. And yes, they, like us, sometimes aren't generous or kind. They can be mean or just plain grumpy. The story we give them still needs to embrace them as someone who loves them already, which leads me to a difference that I think Jesus was getting at. Because he didn't say, you guys, I mean, this is the whole thing about this. He did not say, like your neighbor. He said, love your neighbor. And the difference between like and love is frankly kind of vast. A colleague of mine got at this once when I was on a Zoom call with a bunch of ministers and we were talking about kind of the nature of love, right? And he said this: like is when you know the best side of someone and like them. Love is when you see the worst side of someone and not just love them despite it, but love them because of it. Another way of saying this is like is often about positive, attractive traits, but love is about holding one another in our wholeness. It's not just the pretty, fun, or convenient parts of the other person, but also all of their messy bits as well. I was reminded of what the Buddha said about love when he was asked what the difference was between like and love. And the Buddha said this: when you like a flower, you just pick it. But when you love a flower, you water it daily. The one who understands this understands life. So what is he saying right there, right? He's not really talking about holding one another in our wholeness. He's talking about rooting for the flower's growth, like you go, come on, and contributing to the betterment of that flower's growth. It adds one more layer, it seems to me. Both are needed for love. This challenge between like and love has come into my life in multiple different ways and at different times, but I don't think more so than when I was training for the ministry. I was doing an internship of sorts at a community church in New York with the minister there, Bruce Southworth, and he had me go visit this parishioner that was kind of an ornery guy, and he just asked me to go do a pastoral visit. So I go and I meet this guy and I have a conversation with him, but he's just like, nothing's good. You know, when you have that conversation with someone and they're just kind of like, everything turns into a negative at the end of it. And in particular, he kind of went after my mentor of like not being a good minister, and he really didn't like him. Anyway, so I got back from that visit and I sat down with my colleague and I was like, well, if you knew me, I really said, dude, how do you actually get yourself to the hospital when he's sick? How do you go visit someone like that? And he said to me, I see ministry as an obligation to my congregation to live into Jesus's dictum to love your neighbor as yourself. He said, I don't always have to like my parishioners. And in truth, I don't like some of them that much, but I do have to love them. Not because I am obligated or duty bound or paid to do it, but because there's a spiritual discipline in it of showing up with a genuine desire to support their growth and betterment, a genuine desire for their path to be easier, a genuine desire to do what it takes to make it easier. That is how I think of love, which is greater than whether or not I like them or not. I see it as central to my calling and my work. And that right there, you guys, perhaps more than anything else I've ever learned in the last 20 whatever years, right? The best piece of advice I ever got in the ministry was that. And I've tried to keep that true to my own calling and heart. And it's very useful to apply to my own ministry. So I always apply this to every congregation I'm at. I'm gonna apply it to you guys, even though I'm only with you every now and then. I don't have to like you all the time, but my calling and my charge is to love you all the time. Which again, doesn't mean, even if we apply this to all of us, right? It doesn't mean we have to enjoy each other, but instead means we want the best for each other, whether you're so-called earned it or deserved it. And here's the thing, friends. In my ministry, I have found my greatest challenge with all of this is not necessarily in the church, but it's outside of the church. And I've often thought about, how do we get there? how do we live into this bizarre and challenging call to love our neighbor as ourselves, right? One of the things that kind of grabs me about Unitarian Universalism is we are a tradition that is constantly evolving. We are constantly like taking in new information, new practices, new ways of being in the world to widen the circle, to understand the science, to integrate the qualities that improve our living and loving to ourselves and to others, of course. Evolve, by the way, if you unscramble the letters, of course, has love in it, right? And evolving, in my mind, is a form of loving. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that love takes growth on my part. It takes stretching myself to see parts of others that, well, aren't my favorite, but in the end, doesn't really matter. Love is larger than my liking. And in order to really love, it takes an evolution of effort, a forethought. It takes me taking in the wholeness and fullness of a person. It takes lending them my empathy and compassion. Which, when I really get into this line of thinking, I get kind of excited about all of it. I think it's kind of cool, actually. How cool and amazing is it that we are part of a religious tradition that keeps up with the ways of the world and the challenges and complications and beauties of the present day? I actually think that's pretty amazing. And at times I get super excited about the whole thing because I know from science that if we want to evolve into loving our neighbor, right, we can, in a sense, start instructing our brains to evolve to that end. Neuroplasticity functions in such a way that we can instruct our brains to evolve to more connection, more love, more kindness, more compassion. Amazing, right? We can reshape our brains, and in particular, when we change our behavior, our neuroplasticity responds to that. So I know all of that to be true, right? So while it's true we are a living tradition, an evolving tradition, here's the thing. We are not really a tradition of discipline or practice at all. We leave that to Eastern practitioners most often. Discipline to a practice of love, feels more like something we can yearn for and yet not really achieve. Really, we don't have a practice or habit or discipline to get there at all. But my friends, I actually have a story I want to share with you because I think this may be one of the ways to get there. So a couple of years ago, in the dead of winter, I had to take a parishioner from First Unitarian, which is in the city of Rochester, down to Canandaigua, where we had a sister kind of partner church, right? And we were going to drive together so that we both didn't have to go all the way back up to the church to go home. Okay. So the easiest way to explain this is we both got in our cars at First Unitarian, and then we were driving down to this bus stop in like Victor, New York, which is about 20 miles away. And we were going to leave our cars there, and then we were going to go to Canandaigua together in the same car. So while we're driving down, it is snowing really heavily. And it's those big flakes. And I know you guys are in Florida, but you got to remember what that snow's like when the big flakes kind of hit your windshield and you can't see anything for a moment. And we're just on regular streets, and there are cars like spinning out all around us. And it's not a pretty picture. It took us almost double the amount of time to get to where we were going. And while we're driving down, I'm thinking about this young woman that I'm driving with. Well, not driving with, she's in the car in front of me. But I'm thinking about her the whole time because I'm worried about her. And the year before, she had gotten into a car accident with her sister, and it was in the middle of winter. The car flipped and flipped and flipped and flipped, and the two of them walked away unharmed. But I couldn't imagine being in that kind of weather without kind of feeling freaked out about the whole thing. And I was worried that she might be a little, strangely traumatized, perhaps a little bit. So anyway, we got down to this parking lot. We pull in, she locks her car, she gets in my car. I turn on her seat warmer because I'm a very nice person. And, she says to me purely, earnestly, like she is known to be and is. She says this to me when she gets in the car. I just had the best experience of driving with the snow coming down and the night lights and people in slow motion. And I'm following someone I love, someone who gives my life a value, meaning me, right? And I started looking at all of these cars around me and thinking to myself, I don't know that person, but they could be one more person to love. They could be one more person to love. So I just smiled at each car and sent love their way. I looked at her and I thought, who the hell are you? But holy cow, like she meant it, right? It wasn't fake. And I thought, how transcendent actually to have that kind of opening in yourself that you can even think that there are people endlessly to love. Like you have this space inside of you that your heart can take on love over and over and over again. It will never fill up. It will never reject. It will never be too squished or reticent to open up. It was a beautiful image. And I almost said it out loud. Who are you? Later that night, after I dropped her off, I drove for a couple more miles thinking about that first thought of her. Who are you? And then I turned it on myself. Maybe, just maybe, that should be my experience and practice every time I get in the car, that I think to each passerby, maybe that person is one more person to love. And then send love their way. Friends, I think that can become your practice, even in sunny Florida. Let us remind ourselves the world is full of people ready to be loved, ready to have a loving benefit of the doubt story offered to them, a story that captures our empathy and in turn offers them our love. May that be our collective calling and challenge. May it be so. Amen.
I really loved that. Thank you to Reverend Henderson for that. Beautiful. The mind can always change, I was told, and the heart will always follow. I think I heard that here today too. I loved that. I wrote this song some years ago with one angle in mind, and then I wrote my memoir, my book, and it changed the idea of what this song means to me. Being a biracial Black woman person, I've been challenged by racism, and in my heart I thought maybe, geez, if folks could stop hating, that would be really great. It would be a lot nicer for me. I even experienced it in my family of origin on the side that's Caucasian. And but now I'm challenged. Now I'm challenged. I've challenged myself to love the hater. So this is new. I mean, like the Reverend said, we're always evolving. So this is what's next for me. So now this song means something deeper. It's called A New Day Dawning. There's a time to go inside the heart of all that one holds dear, to grow beyond our childish ways, and trust beyond our fears, a leading that can only come from me within the soul. Equality with dignity, respect and human kindness, a new day dawning, reaching out into the light, a new way becoming, a beacon shining through the night, is a love revealing beneath the skin, where all the same. The answer is simple. A willingness to change is all it takes to heal a world of pain. Where once was violence and hatred everywhere, is now forgiveness with best intentions at the heart. A new tradition where every person counts. Equality with dignity, respect and human kindness, a new day dawning, reaching out into the light, a new way becoming, a beacon shining through the night, is love revealing beneath the skin, where all the same. The answer is simple. Our willingness to change is all it takes to heal a world of pain. We become addicted to our mindsets, slaves of what's not true. Let's never forget that a child of God lives within me and you. There's a time to go inside the heart of all that one holds dear, to grow beyond our selfish ways and trust beyond our fears, a leading that can only come from deep within the soul. Equality with dignity, respect and human kindness. Say that again. Oh, equality with dignity, A new day coming, reaching out into the light. A new way becoming, a beacon shining through the night. It's a love revealing. Beneath the sin, well, all the same began to simple. A willingness to change is all it takes to heal a world. A willingness to change is all it takes to heal a world. A willingness to change is all it takes to heal a world of pain. Transformation, caterpillars to butterflies, that's me anyway. Time to spread our newborn wings and fly. Sing it once. Time to spread our newborn wings and fly. Time to spread our newborn wings and fly. A new day dawning.
Our closing words. When Jesus said, love your neighbor, he knew your neighbor would act, look, believe, and love differently than you. It's kind of the whole point. Please remain standing and join us in extinguishing our chalice. Then together, let's sing our parting hymn, Weave. You can hold hands, or if you prefer not to hold hands, but just send energy to your neighbors, you can do that. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you all for being here today. We'll see you next Sunday.